Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today I want to talk about the Deathrattle skeletons. I did a quick short about these guys because they are so spindly and their parts are pretty fragile, to be honest. And I found myself in a predicament where some of these guys were breaking or were already broken straight from the sprue. And I want to go into some more depth about this. So let me grab one of the sprues that has some of the legs. Now, there are 20 Deathrattle skeletons to create in this mess. And there's basically only 10 options. So basically, you're going to do all 10 of them twice. But you could differentiate them by picking different weapons. So like this dude here can have this halberd, or he can have a mace. And then after that, characters can have like swords or spears, and in some cases banners. I will be honest, I stuck with the swords with my 10 that I did. So just to be clear, I had 10 from the Cursed City box, and they were fantastic. They were pushed together, and quite frankly, they were a lot more sturdy than these guys. So they have all kinds of different weapons, spears and that sort of thing. But I will say this, some of the Cursed City box even, the spears broke, and I had to fix them. And I'm not talking about, I mean, we're not romper roaming with these guys. They're not out in the dirt. In fact, they played one game, and during the game, nothing happened, but just getting the character to dry, all of a sudden, he gets picked up, and the spear just popped right in half. So I had to solve it. And I couldn't just put it back on. It wouldn't stick, so I had to actually get creative and grab a skull from one of my boxes and basically put a skull in the middle so it looked like he had one that he pierced through. So even those guys that are a lot more sturdy than these were not necessarily the strongest thing ever. So when you're building these, I chose to make the swords because they're just, quite frankly, sturdier all around. The arms are at least as thick as a Sister of Battle, and the swords are pretty tough. So I'm pointing out here, and I'm putting my finger under it. This is the legs when you build one of the skeletons. So a skeleton in this starts off with two parts, the chest piece and the back, and then you take a set of legs like I just showed you, you slide that into the back part, and then that goes over the front. Now, when you're doing this, this part here is what could easily break. And in my case, the first 4 out of the 10 skeletons I made came broken. The sprue was already broken, and I had to repair them. Now, the way I did it was pretty simple. One of them broke at the knee, so I just put his hip bone in there, and once it dried enough to where it was not going to fall off, I then glued the leg onto its leg, and fortunately, or the basically knee down to the leg bone, which then was able to connect to the back piece as well, and gave it enough sturdiness that it wasn't going to break. Then you have to go to the next step, which is, in their case, they suggest you put on the arm that's going to hold the shield, and then after it dries, put the shield on. I disagree with that completely, and I feel that it would be much better if you put the shield on the arm, let that dry, and then put the whole completed piece onto the body. If you do it this way, then you won't have as easy a time to make sure that the shield isn't going to interfere with the outfit. If it's all part of one thing, you can kind of shift it around a little bit to ensure that it is beyond the cloak, so that when you're painting, it'll be easier to get to those sections. Whereas if you put the arm on and then you throw the shield on, you're like, well, wherever it is, unless you want to break the model so that you can do it again. So my advice is that every single skeleton, regardless of what the instructions say, put the arm on the shield. That's imperative. Now, the next thing to do is you put the head on, and then they go on to a base, and then you pick a weapon. The basing for them actually did make them a lot more sturdy. So when we come back and we look at these legs, even when they're cut out, they're kind of wobbly. And while that's awesome for lore, that you've got these spindly skeletons that are all wobbly, it sucks when you're building a model. But when you glue them down, for whatever reason, trust the process, they become much more sturdy and they don't feel like they're going to fall apart. Which is important to note because, I mean, these are battle line units. You're going to have a lot of these guys. The reason that I built 10 is because I already had 10 from the Cursed City, and that goes to contribute to my spearhead. So my Soulblight Gravelord spearhead needs 20 Deathrattle skeletons, and if they were super frail, then that would just be crap. I mean, these are the characters that you're supposed to have the most of, you know? It'd be like your orc boys just falling apart. It would just suck. So, anyway, these guys are not crazy hard. It's just the fragility of the different parts that make them, well, I mean, it just means that you have to be more patient. And you have to be ready and willing to do repairs on the fly. And more importantly, you have to not, like, get frustrated that it broke. You know, all of a sudden your skeleton snaps in half, your legs in 3 pieces, which actually happened once. And it's just like, well, you know, what do I do now? Well, I guess you just start gluing. As I said, I had it break at the knee, and I've had it break at the hip as well. It doesn't really matter too terribly much because almost every single one of the front pieces covers up quite a bit of this. In fact, the point that the hip bone looks so realistic is completely hilarious because you cannot see it. They may as well have just made it flat. They should have just made it fit in there properly. Instead, they made it to where the back piece has all this weird texturing that you have to deal with when you shove the bones in there. And I mean, it even attaches up to a spine, which you'll never see. And while I applaud their attention to detail, there is such a thing as wasting time. You know, even when I talk about one of my resin models, there's an interesting point. Here is a resin model that I just did. Under her cloak, there is hardly any detail at all. Like, if you go way under there, it's just blank resin. There's nothing really to it. But if this was one of those skeletons, I don't know, they'd have brocade down there. It looked like the Palace of freaking Versailles or something. Anyway, so that's pretty much all I got to say about these Deathrattle skeletons. I just wanted to go into greater depth. I did this short because I wanted to warn people right away. Not that these characters haven't been out for freaking ever. But, you know, with the Soulblight Gravelords just getting a big update and having all sorts of stuff come out, their Battle Tone was released. We've got the Cursed Sepulchre, it's out. You know, there's just a lot of interest in them right now. So if people are going to start building armies of them or spearheads or whatever else, they will inevitably find themselves with Deathrattle skeletons. And I just felt like now would be a good time to talk about them and ensure people understood to take care. And that if it's broken, it's probably not you. You probably didn't do anything. It just fell apart. Literally, when I cut out my first set of legs, it just fell apart in my hands into 3 pieces. And I just sat there like, wow, I don't think I clipped that. So anyway, if you have any thoughts or questions, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, this is Robert with Society Case Files, signing off.